Good morning. Today we'll be covering the topic on curves, mainly the horizontal curves and vertical curves. Before that, just a recap in a minute of what we completed in the last two lectures. So, for the last two lectures, we were discussing on gradient, what a gradient is actually all about, why it is provided, how it can be expressed. Then we saw the main four types of gradient. The first one is the ruling, the second is the momentum, the third is the pusher or helper gradient, and the last is the station yard gradient. So we saw the importance of all the four gradients, the importance of your ruling gradient, which decides the maximum load that your engine can haul for a particular section, and then the exceptions can be there of a gradient steeper than your ruling gradient in case of a topography which demands so, and then you have a station yard gradient for drainage purpose, ease of drainage, but keeping in mind these two parameters. Then we saw grade compensation. It is nothing but when you have a horizontal curve as well as an up gradient together. So in that case, to reduce the work done by the engine or the load on the engine, the grade is compensated a bit, as in it is reduced a bit, and it is reduced by use of these rules set by the Indian Railways as per the gauge of the railway. So this was all about the gradient. Now today we'll be starting with the curves. Now we all know curves. You have seen curves. You have studied some of them in the or most of them in the second year in surveying. So as you can see in this picture as well, this picture is a typical S curve. S curve is nothing but a curve, two curves simultaneously. One is on opposite direction or opposite side of each other. So here you can see you have a right turn or a right horizontal curve followed by immediately a left horizontal curve. So that is an S curve typically. So as we have seen for gradient also, so we will be seeing why you require a curve. So the answers are quite obvious. Now always you can't take an alignment straight, though it's a what you can say an ideal way of aligning any transportation network, that you join just two points A and B with a straight line, and that will be a alignment. But in practice on site you might have a lot of constraints. Maybe there is an natural or an artificial obstacle. Natural obstacle as in there might be a pond in between, a natural pond, okay? Or there might be a river. So in case if it's a river, so you cannot cross a river at some angle, you have to cross it in 90 degrees. So in that case you might be going like this. Or if it's an artificial obstacle as in a city or a town, and just outskirts is passing through your proposed alignment. So I'll just mark the proposed alignment on the straight line here. So yeah, so this is the proposed alignment. So that is nothing but the artificial obstacle. Then again, we saw that we provide gradients. So if we are providing gradient, to generally we'll be seeing once you provide a change in gradient, if you have two different gradients up and down, so there you have to provide a vertical curve. Okay. So in case of gradients, generally you also inherit the curves part. It might be a vertical curve mostly, or sometimes it might also be an horizontal curve. So next necessity is to route the line through areas having potential traffic. That is, now though it's a railway, uh, we know that railway network in India is one of the largest, but then too Indian Railways continuously striving to connect more and more villages and towns through the railway network. So in that case, suppose I have to connect A and B, but I also have a small town C, and the demand over there for a railway station is you can say it's increasing, or the population is increasing. So in that case, instead of going for an alignment which is straightforward from A to B, you can go for a railway alignment which is going from this town C. So you can go from this side. So in that case, you inherit some curves. Okay. So that's this third point. And again, this point you'll be seeing coming everywhere in the geometric design part of your railways. So everything ends up to the construction cost. So to balance the earthwork, we have seen that to balance earthwork, you provide gradients. So wherever gradient come into picture or change in gradients come into picture, the curves also come into picture. So that's just going along with the gradient necessity, the fourth one. Okay. So in order to balance that, you require curves as well. So these are in short the necessity why we provide curves. Now coming to the effects, now curves, though they have or they are coming into picture due to all these necessities, but they have some effects as well on your railway track. But these effects are more or less they are inherent in your railway track, even though if you provide a straight track also, these things will come into picture. But for a curved section, they are they are significantly seen on site. So what are the effects that we have is there is a lateral bending. Now as we know, it's a curve. So on curve we have studied this, that there are two forces. One is the centrifugal force and the centripetal force. Centrifugal force tends to uh, drag the object away from the curve, and centripetal force tends to uh, drag the object towards the curve. So for our case, centrifugal, it is not desirable. Okay, centripetal, too much centripetal force is also not desirable. So you need to balance these two. The centrifugal and centripetal has to be same. Then only your vehicle, or in this case the railway, it will traverse the curve smoothly. So in case of curve, uh, what is there is, we all know now, this is the typical rail section that we have. Okay. Now if this is the rail section, two rails that we have. So whatever are the wheels, once the vehicle is taking a turn, suppose this is the wheel with the flange assembly. So on the curve section, what happens is, due to the centrifugal and centripetal force, the force on the outward and the inward side of the curve, it is a bit more than the straight section. So that tends the rails to bend laterally. So this lateral bending is more in case of curves. It is there a bit in case of straight track, but it is more in case of curves. Then again, if you apply the mechanics here and if you resolve the forces coming on the wheel to the rail track on a curve section, so when you resolve the forces, you will be knowing that there is an extra vertical load due to the curve. You have an angle of the resultant force, and if you resolve that, you will be getting some extra vertical load on your rails, and that is due to the superelevation provided. Now the superelevation will be studying in the next lecture, but for now you can just keep it in your mind that on curves there is something called superelevation. So due to that, the resultant forces coming on your rail, they are not directly straight, they are somewhat inclined, and when you resolve the different forces, so you get some extra vertical load in that case. And generally it is suggested that you should not provide a curve for these locations or these site conditions specifically, That is in case of a bridge or a tunnel or a viaduct or even a bridge approach or a level crossing or cutting and steep gradient and station yard. So as much as possible, we avoid curves on these sections. But all said, this is the theoretical thing that we are studying, that you should not provide curves or it is not desirable. They say that due to these effects, it is desirable to avoid curves. But in again actual condition, you'll see that there are many locations in the Indian Railway itself where at all these locations you have got curves. So the best example yesterday that we were discussing the Karjat Lonavala section. So in that there are many tunnels in that section. So in that tunnel itself you have a horizontal curve and as well as a vertical curve because it's a up gradient continuous one. So there itself we can see that it's violating the first condition. Okay, but then to theoretically as much as possible, we try to avoid curves at this location all due to this two factors. So that's the effect of curves on your system railway track. Coming to the types of curves, so as you can see in this picture, you can have mainly broad classification, two types of curves. One is the vertical curve. Now, vertical curve, I told you, they come into picture wherever or whenever there is a change in gradient. So as you can see in this picture, the top one, you have a down gradient here, and then from this point onwards somewhere, you have a up gradient. So wherever a down gradient is meeting your up gradient, okay, so here you'll see that it's a mild curve, okay, or here if you see it's a almost flat or a down gradient, and then you have again a down gradient along with a horizontal curve as well. So in that case again you have this curve. So these are the examples of vertical curve. Not always that, it's not always like that whenever a down curve meets a or down gradient meets a up gradient, then only you provide a curve. There are many other conditions as well. We'll be looking in that in a few slides. So this is nothing but a vertical curve, and generally the shape of this curve that is considered or used for design purpose, or the type of curve which is given here, it is nothing but a parabolic curve. Okay. Now we'll be seeing that also why parabolic. Then the second type, it is the horizontal curve. Now clearly you can see in this second picture. So whenever you have to change the direction of your railway, if you have to stop it from going in some other direction and tell it to go in some other direction, so in that case we have to provide a horizontal curve. And generally now these horizontal curves, they are circular in nature. Only for a small part where there is a transition, you have a parabolic curve in picture. Okay. Now we'll be seeing shortly, don't worry, we'll be seeing that what is a circular or what is a parabolic curve. Okay. So these are the two main types of curves, the vertical and the horizontal. Now coming to the more detailed classification of curve or types of curve. So related to shape, we have three main curves that are used in the railways. That is the simple curve, the compound curve, and the parabolic curve. Now if you just see on the top, I have mentioned three figures. So a simple curve is nothing but it is a part of a circle. If I draw just a circle over here, okay, so if I consider this as a circle, so a simple curve is nothing but one arc or one part of this curve or part of this circle. So that acts as my curve. So only this portion I will be utilizing as a curve in my alignment. And generally horizontal curves, as I told you in the previous slide, horizontal curves are these simple curves mainly. Okay. So this is nothing but the simple curve. It is designated either by a radius of that curve or by the degree or the central angle subtended by the ends of the arc. Okay. So it is denoted either by degree or by radius. And we'll be seeing shortly what this third statement means, that the curve lies between two transition curves. Second type, you have a compound curve. Now, compound curve is nothing but you have to what we have seen in simple curve. You have just one circle, and which is having some radius r, and a part of that circle is nothing but a simple curve. Now, in case of compound curve, you might be having two circles and with two different radii, of course, and then some part of the first circle, as you can see here. If I say the smaller one, the smaller radius is r. So this is one circle, part of one circle, a circle which is having a radius r. So this is that one part of it, and I have joined another curve to one of the end of this r, but that another curve, it is having a different radius, or it is part of a different circle which is having a radius r dash. So when I have these kind of curves in my alignment, so those are termed as the compound curve. So a curve which is composed of two or more simple curves of different radii. Okay, for example, I have shown here two curves or two different radius. You can have more than two as well, but compound curve, mostly if they are provided, so they are provided of two combination of two curves, because as you go on increasing the number of curves with different radius, the complications in the design as well as the construction, it goes on increasing. Okay, so they are arranged in such a way that they are tangential to each other. So if you see, uh, if you draw tangent over here, so the end points or the meeting points are almost tangent to each other. So that's the thing that you have to keep in mind, because you are providing a different radius. So if you drastically change the radius at a certain stretch or certain point, so that will lead to disaster in your railway track. It might derail or it might overturn. So to have a smooth transition between the two radius, so you provide them tangential to each other, and these are used when topography constraints prevail. Okay, so as I told you, generally for horizontal curves, we prefer this simple curve. Okay, because the design as well as the construction is very easy, and the maintenance also, it is not much tedious for this simple curve. But whenever there are constraints of site, you have a topography which is forcing you to go for uh, or you cannot go for a simple curve, so there you go for a compound curve. Okay, and the third type, depending on the shape, you have a parabolic curve. Now you all know what's a parabola, so here at the third point I've written a simple equation for a parabola. You have various equation or various types also for various equations for the parabola, but a simple one you can write it in this form: y is equal to k square. So if you draw a parabola, okay, it might be any shape, okay, or in any direction it might be oriented. So a part of this parabola, it becomes your parabolic curve. Okay, so I'll not, even if I have a parabola of this shape, okay, upward facing parabola, but if I have to use a parabolic curve from this, so I'll be using only some part of it. Okay, and generally the end part, we don't consider the apex part. We use the end parts of this parabola for using it as a parabolic curve. Now, why this parabola or parabolic curve is used? Generally, it is used for two reasons. So one, it is used in vertical curves. So as I told you, vertical curve is nothing but a curve where we have a down gradient and an up gradient, suppose, and you cannot take your railway like this. It will be a roller coaster. So in that case, you have to flatten this curve as, or flatten this change as much as possible. So to flatten that change, the curve that is provided is parabola, because if you see the ends of a parabola, they are much more flat than the curve that you get from a simple curve or a compound curve. Okay, So we want a flat transition or a smooth transition. So for that smooth transition, this flatness of the curve is important. So that's why parabolic curves are generally used where you have a vertical curve. Okay. And another thing is when you have a horizontal curve in your system, suppose you have a straight section, your railway track is going straight. Okay. Look at the bottom left corner. The railway track is going straight, and suppose it has to take a right turn. So there will be a curve here, and then again your track is going straight. So in that case, this becomes your horizontal curve, but directly again you cannot change the direction suddenly. That is, your railway is going straight, and then suddenly you are taking a 90-degree turn, right turn, or a left turn, whatever, right turn in this case. So suddenly you can't change the direction. So for that, what we have is a transition curve. The last type that you see, it is dependent on the function. So what's the use of this transition curve is, whenever you are going from a straight track to a curved track, so it will help in transitioning the uh, railway, as in when you are going on a curved track or taking a turn, so there is introduction of your centrifugal force. The centripetal force comes into picture, then there is super elevation. So suddenly you can't change the characteristics of a straight track to a curved track, so that characteristic need to be changed gradually. So your transition curve, it is a curve in between this, uh, if your straight track ends here and your curved track, it or simple curve, it starts here. So in between, whatever you have, this portion, this blue portion, that will be a transition curve. Now it may look as a straight line to our eyes if we see it from a distance, or even if we see closely, but it has some radius, and that radius, it varies gradually. So at this point the radius is infinity, because it is almost at the end of a straight track, or this till here we had a straight track. So for a straight track there is no curve, so the radius is infinity, and this radius, it changes gradually, and at this point where the actual curve starts, the simple curve starts, so at that point the radius will be r, which is equal to the radius of your simple curve. Okay. So this transition from infinity to r for the radius, it is possible due to the length of the curve, and that curve is nothing but a transition curve. So from the name itself, it derives, or from the function itself, it derives its name, that it is helpful in transitioning from one phase to another, or from one direction to another. And again, if you see the curve, it is not actually, we are also not able to distinguish whether it's a curve or a straight line. So that's because the curve is flat, and it is gradually changing its radius. So again, in that case, we go for the parabolic curves. Okay, the section of a parabola. So parabolic curve, it is used in two cases, one in vertical curves and another in transition curves as well. So you can see in the description, curve of a parabolic nature is introduced, which is between the straight section and a circular section, or it is between two compound curves as well. So what I told you, instead of just joining these two compound curves, in this case, what we had discussed, that you have one radius and two radius, second radius. So instead of joining the two curves, two circular curves together, you have a small transition curve in between, and then you change your radius. So wherever there is a change in radius, so we tend to go for, or we generally go for a transition curve. So keep that in mind, because whenever radius changes, a lot more parameter changes, the forces coming on your system change, then the superelevation changes in case of a horizontal curve. Okay. So that's why a transition curves come into picture, and we'll be seeing what all different shapes of this transition curve you can have further. So yeah, so this is particularly this slide related to transition curve only. So already I have given you the objectives, or we have discussed why you have to provide it. So same as I explained earlier. So you have a straight section, A to B is a straight section, and from this point onwards, from point C onwards, you are having the actual circular curve or a simple curve. But directly you cannot join, or you cannot start this point C or place this point C over point B. Okay, so in that case it will be an abrupt curve. So you have to change the uh, radius from infinity to R. So that is done by this transition curve that you can see here. Okay, now it's a bit magnified image, so now you can get the feel of the actual curve. So it is straight for some portion, and then it goes on changing and it transforms into a actual curve with radius R. So the primary objective, if you see for a transition curve, so it is to decrease the radius of the curve gradually. So as I told you, and on a straight section there is no radius, the radius is infinite, and from that infinite you have to change the radius to some value R, from the infinite value to a finite value. So this is done, this decrease in radius is done gradually by the help of this transition curve. Then second thing, as I told you, there is something called superelevation. Now you have studied this in your basic civil also, that superelevation is nothing but on curves. If you have this cross section, now I am not introducing the rails yet. Suppose this is just a ballast layer. So on a straight section, if I draw a horizontal level, okay, so this is your horizontal level. So on a straight section, your cross section is so, and on a curve section, what happens is your outer rail or outer edge is lifted over the inner edge by some distance, and that distance is known as the superelevation, generally given by small e. Okay, this will be studying in detail, and this I have just exaggerated to show you that what is superelevation. Again, in practice, there is this e value is very small, but it affects, though the value is small, it affects a lot in your design. So that is the second primary objective of your transition curve, that from this point, from no superelevation to a superelevation of E, so at this point B, there is no superelevation or E is equal to 0. And at this point C, the superelevation is of some value. Okay. Suppose it's 7%. Okay. So from the 0 to 7%, or if I say 7 mm, okay, the rise is in 7 mm, but superelevation is also denoted in percentage. So this change in your superelevation, again, it can't be abrupt, that till point A you have 0 superelevation, and suddenly at this point, if you introduce this point C and you give a superelevation of 7 mm, so that will not be good for your railway. It will again derail. So again, you have to change the superelevation also gradually, as we have decreased the radius gradually. So again, your transition curve, it helps in changing this superelevation. So if I just mark some points here, so your E value, it will change from 0 to 7%. Like here it will be E will be 1, here E might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. It will go on changing. Okay. So these two are the primary objectives of your transition curve. Now the secondary objectives are nothing but in lines with this only, that the centrifugal force that comes into picture in our curve section. So to gradually increase or decrease this centrifugal force depending on which side your curve is, whether it is on the transition curve is on the starting point or on the ending point of the curve. So depending on that, you will be having the increase or decrease of centrifugal force, and there should be no sudden application or release of force. So for that also, this transition curve helps. So if you don't have a transition curve, there will be 100%, there will be derailment of your railway. So these are the primary and secondary objectives of your transition curve. And if you see the requirement, So again, they are pretty straightforward requirement that it should be tangential to the straight as well as the circular section. So if you see, it's almost acting as a tangent to your circle. Okay, this is the start of your circular curve. And the length of the curve, length of the transition curve, that matters a lot. So whatever is this length that we will be providing, so this length will decide whether the primary and the secondary objectives are satisfied or not. And if you come to the shapes of transition curve, so you can have these different shapes. You might have studied them in your mathematics and engineering drawing, that you have a spiral shape or a cubic parabola or Bernoulli's-Leibniz skate, as you can see on the figure on the right. Now, I'm not saying that if I provide a spiral transition curve, so my shape will be actually like this, but some part or some section of this spiral curve I'll be utilizing. Okay, so that's the meaning. So don't think that you are providing spiral transition, so you are providing this whole shape. No, you are providing only a part of that shape. Okay, so the advantages of each of the curve is given here. Yeah, I'll leave it to you to read. It's just for your understanding that which curve is suitable in what condition. Okay, so coming to the end of your curve, so for your vertical curves, you have again two types, a summit curve and a valley curve. Now, summit curve is nothing but if you have a up gradient followed by a down gradient. Okay. As you can see in this picture on the right hand side, the top four figures. So all top four figures are the summit curve that you have a up gradient. Okay, this is the up gradient plus n1 is the value, and then you have a down gradient minus n2 is the value. So in that case, whatever curve is formed, this one, so this is the summit curve. Or you have a down gradient, a mild down gradient of minus n1 and a steep down gradient of minus n2. So in that case also, whatever curve is there, it is the summit curve. Again, a up gradient of n1 plus n1 and a flat gradient or a zero gradient. So your gradient is zero. So in that case also, the curve that is joining these two gradients is a summit curve. And lastly, two up gradients. The first one is steep n1 and the second one is a bit milder. In that case also, whatever curve is formed, that is a summit curve. Okay, so summit curve, it is nothing but it is in a form of a peak of a mountain. So if you consider a mountain, so a mountain has a peak. So likewise, a summit curve also, it has a peak, or it is also called as apex. Okay, so a curve which is in this form is called a summit curve, and the opposite of this is nothing but a valley curve or a sag curve. As in, if you have a down gradient, a steep down gradient and a mild down gradient, then again whatever curve is formed, this is a valley curve. A down gradient and a zero gradient, so again you have a summit curve. A down gradient with a up gradient, so it's a valley curve. Sorry, this is also a valley curve. I said summit. So valley curve, it is nothing but it just replicates the shape of a valley. Okay, so a valley, if you have two mountains, okay, so in between you have a valley, so you can have a river here or a stream here, or it can be a dry valley as well. Okay. So the curve, it just replicates the shape of a valley. And the last one, the upgradient and a upgradient on opposite hand, so that will form a mild valley curve. So these are the different types of your vertical curves. So this is all with the curve section or the curve topic. So what we saw is, just to quickly revise, why we provide a curve. So what's the necessity and what are the effects? So mainly the lateral bending on the lateral stresses on your rail are the effect of your curves. Then we saw what is the vertical and horizontal curve. Then we saw in detail the types of curve. So you have a simple curve, compound curve, parabolic curve, and a transition curve. So transition, again we saw in detail why we require transition. You have some primary objective as well as secondary objective. and then what are the different shapes of your transition curve. And again, to stress upon, you do not provide a whole curve or a whole shape, you just provide a part of this shape as a transition curve. And then finally we ended with the vertical curves, so different types, the summit and the valley curves, and in what condition it becomes a summit curve and in what condition it becomes a valley curve. So that's all for today. In the next lecture, we'll be starting with the super elevation part. So any doubts in today's lecture, the curves, whatever we have discussed? Any doubts, you can just type in. I'll wait for another 2 minutes. I know I have just taken 5 to 10 minutes extra, but it's okay. Sometimes you need to cover that topic. Yeah, I was expecting a question from Aditya. It's good that someone is taking interest in railways. So why to cross a river at 90 degree? Yeah, so there are many parameters involved in it. So quickly, I'll just share the screen. Uh, yeah, now in river, case of a river, what happens is, if you have studied the, I'll just draw a river. So in geology or in geography, also in school geography, you might have studied this. So river has different phases. So generally, it is a thumb rule that whenever you cross a river by road or by a railway, so you cross it at 90 degree. So 90 degree as in whatever is the flow of the river. So to that flow, your flow of the traffic. So in case of highway, that traffic is nothing but vehicles, and in case of a railway, that traffic is nothing but train. So this two flows, flow of the vehicle and the flow of the river, it should be at 90 degree. Okay. Now why it is so? If you can also provide it at some angle, that if I provide a bridge like this in railway or a highway, it is also okay, but it is not much desirable because the forces that come on this bridge, if you see a bridge, you have a general abutment. Okay, so these are the abutments, and in between you have piers for a bridge, and over that you have a deck slab. Now this is a very crude diagram that I am drawing. Okay, so due to that, this river, so your river water, it will be in between here. Okay, might be partially it will be affecting your abutment or it will not affect at all, but the piers that are located inside your water body, okay, so they are taking all the current and all the forces of the water. So if this if you have a this slanting one, okay, if you just have two forces which are at some angle, so in that case the design complications, they increase a lot in case of your design of a pier and the slab over it. Okay, and also in case of flooding, there will be extra forces. So we don't really want your bridge to just wash off in the first few of the monsoons or the floods. So that's why we go for a 90-degree angle. Now, in detail, if you are interested in bridges, so again, you have an elective in last year, airport and bridge engineering. So in that 3 units, they are dedicated to this bridge engineering part, and you will be seeing 2 units, sorry. And in the 2 units, you'll be studying why you have to actually go for a 90-degree angle. So the main reason is the forces, and as I told you, the meandering path. If you have studied the phases of your river, so you also have a meandering phase in which the river is subjected to such curves and it goes on changing. Okay, this path goes on changing. So that's why we tend to have a bridge on a straight section where the river is will not change the path in the future. So that's the reason that we provide it in a 90 degree or cross a river at 90 degree. Yeah, but if piers are at 90 degree, more surface area comes in contact. Yeah, more surface area comes in contact, but the surface of your pier, it is never given straight edge, as in, I'll just again. So what you're saying is correct, Aditya, that if I see the top view, so if I have a square pier, so obviously the water force, if I place it on a 90 degree, so water force will be perpendicular to this face, and in that case, the force will be more. But if you observe closely, never a pier of a bridge which is in running river, so it is never a square. We generally give it a tapered one like this. Okay, there are different shapes also. Now, these shapes also depend on what type of current is there in your river. Okay, water current, I'm saying. So it's a tapered one or it's a circular one. So you have different shapes, but we avoid this shape of your piers if you have a strong water current. If it's a perennial river, so 100% we avoid this square pier or rectangular pier.